Hello everyone. It was brought to my attention that I really should put a intro and describe what I am doing today. If you watched my last video, I didn't have one, and it was the tabletop. I'm currently building a picnic table for a friend of mine, and it is going to be a 6-foot picnic table approximately. It's about an inch short, but I think it'll do okay. Today I'm going to be working on the legs. If you want to check out how to do the tabletop, I have a previous video that you can go to, and I will make a link to that. And other than that, let's try to get started. Actually, I should put one disclaimer in here. This design is not really my design. It is a design by Jay Bates. He is an awesome YouTuber that does very inexpensive, I guess, projects that the basic woodworker can do. So if you get a chance, tune into his channel as well, and you'll learn a lot of stuff. So without further ado, let's get this thing going. Okay, I started out here, and I want to cut the angles for the legs. These are all at 30 degrees. I'm using a framing square here to measure out my degrees. Basically, it uses a pivot point, and it has markings on it for different degrees, so you just move it to the degrees and you strike your line. And once this is done, we're able to make the cut. I'm currently not using any kind of a straight edge or anything, so I'm trying to be very careful on how I'm cutting my line. Notice I'm using the laser line on my saw. I'm lining that up with my actual line, making sure I'm straight, and I actually have a guide on my saw that allows me to see where I'm cutting. So I'm also using that. So after that, I really have to just use the blade and look to see where the guide is. And of course, every good woodworker knows to measure and check your plans. Measure twice, cut once. That's what I've always been told. It's a good rule to follow. And we're just going to repeat the process for the top part of the legs. And I set the pivot point at my mark, angle it up to my 30 degrees that I'm using for the legs, and I'll make my cut. After I make sure my vision's clear, of course. And here we go. And again, I'm trying to be very careful to stay on my line. I believe that this is a piece that it binded up a little on me. I started feeling a little kickback, but it was able to continue on through with the cut. Right there you see the I stopped the saw because I was getting some kickback, so I stopped the saw and continued. Safety first. And again, once it's cut, measure it. And as you can see, it's all good. And you have to do this 4 times. There's 2 for each set of legs. And in the end, this basically how you're going to do it is when you set them up, you're going to angle them on the ground, and the 30-degree angle is going to be the feet and the top, and it will come together in a pyramid shape, such as what I'm showing you here. And these pieces will be for the cross pieces for the top. There's also another brace that goes across the legs for the lower brace, but all that is another 2x6 cut in half, 6 feet a piece. So you just cut a 12-foot 2x6 in half. It's not a big deal, so I didn't include it in this video. You will need 2 of these, and they're approximately 27 inches. They're a little bit over, I think. I'd have to look at the plans, but those plans you can get from jayscustomcreations.com, and I'll try to put a link to that as well. And I included this in the video to show you that you didn't need a chop saw to do this at all. No sliding compound miter or anything. You can do this whole thing with just a circular saw and some sawhorses and a table. So it is not a difficult project, and it doesn't require high-tech tools or a table saw or anything spectacular. So also this plans you need a miter on the ends, on the corners of these. Basically this is just a 1.5 by 1.5 inch miter, cutting the corner off. It's pretty simple. I use my framing square to do it, and once that's done you can start proceeding to putting together the legs. And from here we're going to start making the connectors for the seat slats and also the connectors for the tabletop. What I'm going to be using is pocket hole screws, and I'll be using a Craig jig for that. All you have to do is take your measurements on the board, and then also on the short end you take the measurement on this board, and you just keep marking it down as per the plans. As you can see, I'm checking them just to make sure it's good. These need to be accurate so that they go into the actual boards at the right spacing for the top. Because this screws directly into the top, and you don't want it on a gap. Right here you'll see my Craig jig. I strike a line across the whole board because there's actually markings on the inside facing of the jig where it shows you how to line it up. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm making my marks. Then I just lay it in there, and I drill the pocket holes as I'm lining it up at each mark. I've also got this on a hanging storage platform, so I have to put a extension on the back end of it to keep the board level. But it should end up looking like this, and then you just repeat it for the other side. And it's pretty much the same way with the longer board. You make your marks across, and then you line it up and drill your holes. There's only 4 holes per side on this one. The plans actually tell you which pocket holes to drill. If you notice on the top of the jig there's 3 holes, and it's labeled A, B, and C. So it actually tells you to use A and B on one set and A and C on the second set. So Also notice that it has a built-in dust extraction, which is really nice. It keeps the actual drill bit clear of wood as well as you're drilling. Otherwise you get a lot of shavings. And here we have it laid out, and I've got the markings on the wall for where each ends of the legs are. So that puts a good spacing out. And then I got a center mark down the middle, and I mark the center of both of my boards. I don't have a carpenter square, so I made do with a level and my framing square. I lined it up, made sure my level was perpendicular with the boards, and lined up my center point with the wall. Then I measured up 17 inches to the top of the lower slat, and did the same thing for the top as well, except it's a different measurement. I'd have to check the plans again to know exactly what it was. But I added glue to make sure I got a good bond. After I rolled the board up, making sure that I didn't lose my spot. And then I pressed it back down and made sure that I've got good cohesion. I'm also going to use 2-inch brad nails to hold this thing in place so it doesn't slide around, because if you remember with the top, it slid around on me when I added the glue to it. So I'm just going to add a couple of 2-inch brads here along the short side of that diagonal that I'm doing now, and that will keep it in place so it doesn't slide around. In that same area, I will also be putting some of those 2.5-inch decking screws as well. The top slat is done pretty much the same way. You fold it up. I spread out the glue on this one. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but it gets a little bit evener spread, more even spread. And then I carefully lay it back down and do the same thing with the brad nails. I only put 2 in this one because it's a smaller board, so it won't slide around as much. And that will keep it in place. And here I'm putting the decking screws in. They're 2.5-inch, so they say that in the plans they use 3-inch, but if you do 3-inch, you really got to put it at an angle, and I didn't want to risk coming through the other side of the table, so I used 2.5. It should hold just fine with 2.5. But I actually put I believe it was 5 screws in this, in the top one. Might have been a few more, I can't remember exactly. But on this one I put 2 decking screws in, and that should hold it fine, because the actual strength on this is going to come from whenever we put the carriage bolts in, which I will probably do in the next video before I actually connect it to the tabletop. But after that, you're pretty much done with the leg. You got to make 1 more of these, and once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quickly. But that's what it looks like. So until next time, thank you much.